The United States recognized for the first time that our standard of living could be held hostage by people halfway around the world. With good policy, this could have been the initiation of a transition to a renewable society. That in itself was not a new concept. In the early 1950s, a government commission called the Paley Commission urged a transition as rapidly as possible to renewable energy, to solar energy, to energy efficiency, as a matter of national security. Of course, we ignored them.
The United States of America, as the greatest industrial power of the world, with 7% of the world's people, and using 30% of the world's energy, shouldn't have to depend on any other country for energy that provides our jobs and our transportations and our light and our heat. We can become self-sufficient. This is a great project, and I'm going to push it. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. I guess that's the end.
I remember when Nixon stood up and announced Project Independence. Every president after him announced some sort of energy independent program. And of course, they all had more or less the same result. But these were peripheral responses. They didn't get to the heart of it, and never did.
The energy market at that time was a market that was a combination of guaranteed monopolies, cartels, and insurance and price subsidies, favoring the largest, the most powerful, the most wealthy, and I will say the most ruthless corporations in America. And they had just a stranglehold on Congress. Electric utilities were the largest monopolists in the country. There was only one way to buy power. So, historically, you have one set of hugely powerful interests defending their preeminence, and on the other hand, a bunch of solar entrepreneurs operating out of their garages with virtually nothing. It's like me going into the boxing ring with Muhammad Ali. It's just not a contest.
It's done.
Development and economic progress has been at the heart of the election of congressmen. And there's generally been a lot more money from the energy companies and the developers. So the environmental movement may be viewed by most of the public as important, but to the politician who's elected, who gives the money? There's no benefit to them in looking at the solution of long-range problems like global warming or the conservation of energy. It's a short-term problem that he's got to address to get reelected. Follow the money.
It's not a fad. The concern for environment is a very...
Many of us believed if you just elected the right people and they passed the right laws, if you could bring a case to court and get a ruling, then everybody would have to be good. Well, no. People said, you can't make me do anything. And that, in part, set up a conflict that to some extent endures to this day.
A case in point in the 60s and 70s was people who went to logging areas. City people went and shook their fingers at the loggers and said, stop clear cutting. And the loggers looked at these folks. I was a logger, so I'm on their side on this one. They just said, you're not from here. You don't know what you're talking about. And your entire effort seems to be making sure that my livelihood goes away. Why don't you just go away?
Just look around. All the land's going into parks, and if it all goes into parks, then we just won't have no timber, and jobs will go, housing will go sky high. This area will become practically a ghost town.
And so as a result, what you got was, instead of some engagement that might have led to better forest practices right away, you got a standoff that lasted decades. Then you have to ask yourself, is the thing that we want to make a big fuss and feel righteous, or is the thing that we want better forest practices? Which is a completely arguable thing for people who would not only like to keep their job as loggers, but have these rural communities keep going, because logging is what they do. Sustainable logging looks to them like a good thing, put in those terms. But put in the terms of, stop what you're doing, you bad person you, that doesn't fly.
The environmental movement was becoming more professionalized and Washington-centric. And to a certain extent, the environmental movement developed some clout through the big national organizations, but it also became susceptible to being overpowered by bigger organizations with deeper pockets.
I began to recognize that much of what the early environmental movement was trying to do, to litigate, to legislate, to lobby in a top-down fashion, could buy time, it could hold off the worst, but it could never implement true sustainability.
A whole cadre of people that I hung out with wanted to solve problems right now directly with minimal resources and maximum ingenuity. We imagined that we were outlaw designers. We had a sense that there were design solutions that could be brought to bear on everything from, say, solar technology to energy conservation and efficiency. We wanted to take the engineering approach and say, let's just fix that. There's not a political fix for it, but there is a technological fix for it. Just do it. Don't try to change human nature. It's not going to change. Don't try to change politics. It's too clueless. You can change technology, and that will fix things. Human nature can stay right where it is. The politics can catch on 20 years later, but meanwhile, you fixed the problem.
Many large American companies had within them individuals and small groups desperate to innovate in the same way. For example, since the 60s, there were people within General Motors, I know I've talked to them, who were designing super efficient cars with technologies like electricity and hybrid electric or even hydrogen. And yet senior management, I think, had a lack of imagination and a resistance to change. There was a sense that if you just keep doing what you've always done, you're safe.